Hello and welcome. I am Bigfoot, and this is episode 4 of my Let's Play series. In the last episode, the end of the last episode, I was just starting to think about what I was going to do for the main base. Now, I've just been sitting here for about 10 minutes thinking about how I'm going to go about the start. What do I need to build? Where does it need to go? What do I need to think about at this moment in time? Now, it's only really important because I want to jam all of this together, and I want this particular area to be perfect, because this area here is going to act as like a lobby, and I need 2 lobbies, one for each track, and they need to be elegant, they need to be the right size, and they need to be able to have all of the right stuff inside it. So I've been sitting here thinking, and alright, okay, let's start at the beginning. I'm not a big fan of SPM, or at least I wasn't, but since going down the journey of SPM, I'm now in a position where, well, if I'm going to aim for something, I may as well aim for that. So, because I'm a nerd, I've done a tutorial about this, I have a spreadsheet, here it is. And I've been playing around with the numbers in this spreadsheet, trying to work out what a perfect SPM might look like. You know, something that fits a nice number of belts, something that uses a nice number of assembly machines and furnaces. What does an elegant SPM look like in numbers terms? So what I've got on the screen here is the values for 234 SPM, which I know is not an elegant number in itself, but it kind of gives rise to an elegant number in the factory. So over on this side, this is what I've set up to work out how many trains I need to achieve that SPM. So in order to get the number of copper into the base to achieve that, I need 8 6 storage trains. So a train with 6 storage carts in it. Doesn't really matter about how many locomotives. And then for iron, because obviously copper is critical, but iron is 7.4. So obviously I would just do the same again. I just bring 8 storage carts, 8 trains worth of iron into the factory. So that 8 is a nice number. I like 8. It's divisible a lot of different ways. So that speaks to me a little bit. Also, total number of copper required is 15.9 blue belts worth of copper. So again, round it up to 16. I like 16. That's a nice number. Iron, I do slightly different ways. I don't know why that's 1.8. That's a funny number. But I mean, to be honest, I'm going to be bringing in more iron than I need, so I don't need to worry about iron. Plastic, 3.2 blue belts worth, so I just bring 4. Green belts, I need 9.5 red belts worth. And this number is a little bit more pertinent because it also means that I need 9.5 blocks of green chips. So that I ran that up to 10. 10 do nicely for me. So overall, this is a base size that I can make work. The numbers speak to me a little bit. Even if the final number SPM isn't, you know, all that elegant or precise, the end result is something I can work with. If we go back to the game, now what I need to do, what I've determined that I need to do is that I need to figure out the trains. So I've had a lot of problems with trains recently. This SPM spreadsheet would give me 16 trains for iron and copper. I'm going to need probably 2 or 3, probably let's say 4 for the stone. I'm going to reckon I'm going to need 8 to 12 for oil. Another couple for uranium. So I'm going to end up probably with about 25 to 30 trains on the network in total. And that's a number that is a big enough number to worry about. It's not necessarily something to worry about, something that I just want to be aware of. So What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start playing around with some railways, and I mean, this is all going to be outside of the time lapse. This is just me playing around with stuff so that I can get a feel for what I need, what I'm planning for the basics, and then once I know where that's going, I can build the stuff around it to suit. That's all of that is a whole long mouthful. I mean, this is an important moment. This is an important thing. This starting point, and I don't want to get it wrong. I've had several times where I've started on a particular path and then found out halfway through that I've started out from the wrong path. So I'm just a little bit aware, a little bit trepidation is the right word. Just a little bit nervous about just ploughing on ahead without thinking about things too much. So that's why I've been sat here looking at things, just thinking it through. And what I've determined is that the important thing to do first is the main bus and the railway and how those two interact. Because obviously I've got this centre line, I've got the start of the bus with the water barrels, and figuring out, and I've always going to need a whole lot of iron, copper, computer chips, etc. Figuring out how and how many numbers and their distribution, etc., etc. I need to work that out and how that interacts with the railway line. That's what I've determined I'm going to start. So let's get going. Yeah, let's get going. Oh no, thinking about it. No, I'm going to make a plan on paper. I'm going to work out what's going to go on paper, and then I'm going to plan it out on the screen. Yeah, I'm going to do it that way. That's a much better way. Alright, okay. Enact plan. Okay, sometime later, as you can clearly see, nothing has progressed. But I have been working on my diagram, so let's have a look. So, here is the basic diagram. I mean, it looks complicated. It's essentially the basic setup of my factory. So first up, I'm going to deal with copper. What I need is 16 times 45, so that's 16 blue belts of copper. Then I need green chips, so 10 times 30, so each block of green chips gives me a 30 belt of green chips. I need 10 of those. Then I need red chips, so that's 2 times 30. I don't quite know how I'm going to work out the blocks there, but what that means is I need two red belts of red chips output, then blue chips, which I'll just fill that in. Then we'll have iron and steel, and then we'll have the rest of the factory. So by the time we get to the rest of the factory, I'll have all of these things sorted, lined up, ready to go. And these lines are where they need to go. So obviously there's a centre line, and then this is half of the factory and half of the factory. So we've got 16 belts, 8 on the top, 8 on the bottom. 5 of those 8 will need to go straight into green chips. 1.2 of those belts will need to go into red chips. 1.8 of that, and then the other 1.8 will go into the rest of the factory, and that is reflected around the centre line. Then in the same motion, so what we'll essentially have, by the idea being behind having everything sandwiched between copper and iron and steel, is that I can use the same space in the bus for certain ingredients. So because I've got 5 belts of copper going into green chips, and I'm going to have 5 belts of, I'm going to coordinate this, so the copper is going to be in blue belt format, the iron is going to be in red belt format, so that it matches up with the ingredients proportion. I'm sure I've done this before, said this sort of thing before. So the 5 belts of iron that need to go into green chips will occupy the same space in the bus as the 5 belts that come in for copper. And the same thing is done again for the copper that goes into the red chips. It's not going to work out quite as elegantly, because I'm going to need to carry on 2 belts across, because I can't do 1.8. So, but one of those belts of plastic will come in and get lost in the same space as the bus. This is how I've been doing factories for a while now in vanilla, so I figured there's no why rock the boat, why change things up. As we move across, we've got more. So we've got blue chips. Blue chips, you know, that will just fill a space. You know, it's only going to be a certain number of assembly machines, and it's not going to be anywhere near as big as the green and the red, and the iron and the steel and the copper. It will just fill a space. And then we'll get into the factory. So these are all the things that will be coming in and going out of the factory. It's just so this is just going to help me organize what I'm going to need to build to start anyway. Now I've highlighted, I've dotted this area in red. This area in red is traditionally the critical point. This is where the most amount of belts are going to cross and intersect. So this is where the bus needs to be the biggest. But because I'm dealing in fractions of belts, I think I'm going to have to think about this part of the bus as well, just to make sure this is when it exits out here, it's got enough space, because you know it's not going to work out as perfectly because the numbers are so small. Normally, when in the bigger bases, the numbers work out bigger, and I can make much more economies of scale. And this area in the red tends to be the biggest area. But I'm going to test out both. I'm going to test out this area, and I'm going to test out this area, and then whichever area I need for the bus that's biggest, I'll use that one. So that's the basic diagram. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to construct this in Factorio, both of these. So this area here in the red dotted area, and this area over to the right, and then I'll eventually come to some sort of compromise about what it's going to look like, and then I can start playing around with railways. That's the process. That is the process. So what I need to do is I need to find an area that's well off the map. Let's go find an area that's well off the map. I need some railways. Let me turn the time lapse on for this. So I finally busted out the car to make use of its large inventory size, which is going to come in very, very useful over time. And I've built out all of these belts and stuff so that I can start planning stuff out. Or at least that's what I thought I was going to do. But what I've actually done is make another list. I've written down where I want belts to go, in different positions on that map that I showed you before. And I'm doing something a little. This is not normally the way that I would do it. So there might be problems. There might not. It's one of those things. You're never really quite sure until you try it out. So I'm going to start trying to plan it out and see how far I get. That's what I'm going to do. So this is the bus that's going to enter the factory. This is what I found to be the critical part, which is actually different from other bases, and that's because when you're dealing with fractions of a belt, you've got to have one belt. There's no economies of scale. So and this space here, this is going to be used by another belt somewhere further down the line. So I needed this space. So although in my mind I could have put it, I probably couldn't know. This is the only place it could go. So, and also because I want it to run on this needs to coordinate with the railway line. So I've actually created a gap. Anyway, this is now going to be, well, hopefully where the railway line's going to go. Something like, I think like this. I need to do the same on the other side. So that is the basic skeleton, I think. But I need to play around with how I'm going to make these trains work before I can go any further. That's what I need to do. I need to have a play around with what I can make work. I mean, these are going to be large trains. 6 storage carts, 3 locomotives, it's 9 long. It's going to need some pretty decent interchanges. So I can't muck around. They need to be serious. So that's what I'm going to do now. Let's just have a little play, see what I can come up with. Nope, No, that's definitely not right. Not right. This is going in the wrong direction. Nope. 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 That was exactly what I was trying. That's exactly what I'm trying to avoid. This kind of Cloverfield pattern. That's exactly what I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to engineer a situation which is better than this. That's what I'm trying to do. How do I do that? This isn't it. That is a bit more like it, I think. I'm still not 100% sure, and this isn't totally accurate. It's not. It's kind of diagrammatic. I'm kind of figuring out roughly where the routes are going to go. So, although this dimension is fixed, for example, these railway lines more or less have to go here, but I could make this roundabout much longer if I needed to. I think I'd have much more space than in the main factory when I get there between here and here than I have drawn out here. I'm just planning things out. But this is starting to form into some kind of a plan now. So in order to get it to work, I've had to move everything out. This isn't here anymore. It's actually back here. So I've had to increase my bus zone a little bit. So it's kind of made a bit of my planning a little bit, well, not useful as much. But the point is that clover that I had before, I don't like it, and I think that it's just going to get jammed up. It just looks so prone for jamming. So essentially, imagine that clover but expanded. That's my idea. And then I want to try and run the bus through. Maybe I'm jumping a step here. Maybe I'm jumping a step. Let me hold on a second. Let me just see if I can. Let me see if I can find something. Here, yeah. Okay, here we go. Right. So this is my junction from the second 2000 SPM base, which I thought it was going to be transformative. It didn't turn out to be that case, or at least to be honest, I haven't really tested it. Haven't really tried it out as. Anyway, my point is this: what I'm trying to achieve is something like this, a lot smaller, more compact, less turns. I don't think there's probably too many turns. Well, I don't need that many. And I'm probably going to, what I'm going to try and do is have that input, that centre line that I'm coming in. I'm going to try and come in with those two railway lines, and then coming out, I'm going to have two coming out. So all of the main inputs will just come in by those dual railway lines, and I'll have a couple of those. And then in order for the intra factory train, so that there's a bit more capacity in the internal part of each of these junctions, I'm going to have two coming out. So that's the theory. And then instead of having the bus somewhere else, I'm going to try and run the bus through the middle of it. So I kind of create this railway line slash conveyor belt zone bus thing. But the key is to have not just a single loop around the edge. I want this second railway line. So if you imagine it's just a single loop, say it's going clockwise, no, anti-clockwise. The train comes here, it wants to go up here, it has to go all the way around the loop before it can get up here. So that means that anything else that wants to travel around that loop, it will get in the way of. So what I want is I want it to go around that loop. So I want it to come around here, I suppose, then it's going to have to come around here. Is that shorter than round all the way around? Well, anyway, that's the plan anyway, regardless of the logic of anything. That's the idea that I'm trying to come up with. I think this works. Now this is where I suppose my design strategy comes in. This part here, what I don't want to do with this particular part of the railway is run a conveyor belt under it. I want to keep these two tiles completely free so that I don't have to do this, because as I said, this railway line might extend for quite a long way. I don't know the scale of what I'm dealing with here yet. So this zone, these two railway lines, this zone here, I want to keep completely free of the bus. So all of this needs to move up a little bit. And the reason why this is here is because this is the extent of the bus that I've already built. So this is the steel line going to barrels. So that's pretty fixed from here right the way through all the way to my starter factory. I don't want to move, I don't want to kink, I don't want to change anything about these belts. This bus is fixed. But all these other ones that I've got here, these are flexible, these can all be moved. So if I can move these up, I've had to create more space. In order to get this loop to work, I needed more space in the bus anyway. So I'm not losing anything by moving this up. And it just keeps my zones nice and clear. But even if I didn't, let's just say, for example, I didn't have to move it up, I still would have moved it up anyway, even if I could get the curve to work, just to move this bus up, because I don't want to run these underground belts directly beneath these railway lines like this. This isn't very nice. So what I'm going to do now is just demolish all this and move all of this upwards. So this is the new distribution of where my bus is going to go, and although this looks like it's in the perfect place, I think I need more space. So in order, imagine I've got a factory unit up here and I need to get this belt to a factory unit up here. The standard way would be to put a splitter like this, but then I need to demolish the wall in order to get my underground belt in, and that's not going to work. So the only way to get that to work would be to move it onto the other side, and then I've got my underground belt. But this is, I mean, it's workable, and it definitely, I do use it an awful lot, but I do think it's not my go-to, and I think this is ugly. I would much prefer if I move this back to here, and then I've got enough space to get the splitter in and the underground belt. So I'm going to move this all out just one more. Now that I've got a bit more space, can I bring that loop round here? There's a question. That is much nicer. That's a much more elegant way of doing things. Okay, I think that's the plan. I need to do this bus down here. That's what I need to do now. So here we are. I've built it in the place where it's going to go. This train track isn't really for any specific purpose. This is more just as an access relief valve, I don't know, something to just go. There's going to be this line that's going to run just around the perimeter, has no real purpose, but just links everything together from the outside. It's just kind of a miscellaneous. I found it to be useful to have just like a ring road, like a railway ring road. That's a tongue twister. Around the factory. So that's what this was doing. And this is something I don't normally do, is with this one here that crosses this line. I've just put it in, and I don't like it, but I think it might also be the crucial element to this whole thing working. So imagine the train coming across here. Now, if this was a single loop, it would have to go all the way around the loop, around to get up here. So the way to reduce that distance is to have a single inside loop that comes around here. So this railway line is what makes this second loop that I'm building on the inside worthwhile. That's my thinking. Not necessarily going to be correct. And also, just looking at it, I might have a problem getting a railway signal in there. So I might have to do that. And then I can get a railway signal in here and in here. I think that's what it's going to need to be. But it's something I'm going to keep an eye on when the thing's going up and running. I mean, this is going to be a common junction. This isn't going to be the only time it happens. I'm just keeping an eye on these things now as they develop. Again, whereas before I might have just taken it for granted, now I'm looking at it, thinking about it. And one other thing, these garages are going to have to move. Definitely, certainly, they're in the wrong place, completely the wrong place. I need this bus to come through. This is going to come up, and new thinking is that I have either 2, 3, or 4 of the garages on the bottom half, so maybe symmetrical, which would require all of this to be gone. All of this all would need to go, so I can put the other 4 here and bring the pit lane in somewhere down here. It would be completely different from what it is at the moment, but it's completely achievable. I'll have to fiddle with the top entry as well, but that's no big deal. I'm almost entirely convinced. So next, I need my control panels. So for each of these tracks, I need a control panel, which is all the timing and the go switch and the and option buttons and bits and pieces. So again, I think I'm going to have one above, one below. Maybe do the main track from the one below. Let's see how it goes. I just need a path. Let's put the path in now. So the position of my path has finally been the death knell for my pit lane. This is where I obviously want it to come across. This is the path that went at the back of the garages that I'm going to keep. But this obviously, completely. I neglect to even think about where this would come in. And now that it's here, what I wanted to do is I want to have a path that comes all the way across here. And it does actually look like it misses. Yeah, it misses these belts, these underground belts. That's good. So I'm going to have a path that runs all the way across here. And into the starter factory. And that's not the starter factory, that's the water barrels. But there'll be another one. There's another path, obviously, in exactly the same place on the bottom over here. So that one will do the same. And now almost certainly that these garages are going to come down here. So this path will come across here. These garages will now be completely symmetrical. Everything is going to work out perfectly. It's going to look amazing. So yeah, just how some things I forget to even think about, and then when I put it in, it's like, oh yeah, that's totally completely wrong. Not even remotely close to being right. But it now does mean that this I can bring these belts through, which I wanted to do in the first place. You know, silver linings and all that. Okay, so back to what I was thinking about before. Now that yeah, is my control panel for the timing loops and stuff. Now, what I've done is I've just measured the same one that I used before last time. Oh, pardon me. Figuring, well, I got it to work last time, so why wouldn't I be able to get it to work this time? However, I do want to see if I can make it work as an elegant module size with all the furnaces, so I can kind of bury it in the same depth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out the one that it was in my last one, and then I'm going to build something. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Okay. Well, finally, we're moving our way towards doing something interesting. Very, very close, anyway. At least something that's going to that's come as a result of all of this kind of prep work I've been doing, trying to set things out, get things just right. Hopefully soon we'll get some building. But also, finally, one more thing that needs to happen before we can get there is I need to move the damn time lapse. So what we have at the moment, we have obviously the whole track. And this is the corner of this is where I need to zoom into, this bit up here. So what I need to do around here, I have a certain amount of furnaces I need to build, and I have a certain amount of trains that I need to build, and I need to work out what the optimum geometry, how I'm going to fit all of that stuff together, and also work in a racetrack as well at the same time, and also a racetrack that isn't boring with lots of right angle corners, something with a little bit more interest than just like a block grid racetrack. I think that would be boring, so I'm trying to work out how to make it a little bit more interesting. And also I'm going to have to try and work in some non-symmetricalness as well, because a symmetrical racetrack is going to be bad. It's going to be boring, so it needs to be lopsided in some way. But anyway, that's not just yet. What I need to do is I need to zoom in here, and then I need to start playing around with some railway lines and some furnaces. That's what I'm going to do now. Lots of work. So what I just did there was what I like to call a transition on the move. By essentially setting up the time lapse to pan very, very, very slowly at the same frame rate that I normally build at, I can build whilst the camera is moving, and it will seem like the same sort of rate of progress as all the rest of the time lapse. It does mean that once I've set it off, because of the time lapse, you can't pause it or stop the zooming process once you let it go. It does mean that once I start building and once I've set it off, I'm committed to building something. So what I've built is what I want to build. This is what I want to be the smelting setup for well, the copper at least. The steel and the iron might be slightly different, but for the copper, this is what I want to build. This is what I want it to be. So whether this will be the final positioning, or I do like it, this is where I want it to be, this is what I want it to be. So this is, but sometimes you don't always get what you want, you know what I mean? Sometimes you've got to make compromises. I've left a gap here, for example. Now there might be a case in the future where I need to close that gap, or maybe open it up a little bit more, who knows. So I've just left it as furnaces. I haven't filled it up with any inserters or power yet, because it at least gives me a little bit more freedom to move it. I also had to demolish and rebuild a few times because I forgot a few things. Both times I had to do it because of this lane here. So normally with my smelting setup, looks very good and all, but it's completely impenetrable for robots. It's completely impossible for any robots to get across it, and I'm always trying to squeeze in a roboport just wherever I can find space for it. So that kind of grew thin a couple of factories ago, so now I've started to put these lanes in where I know that the distance from here to here and the distance from here to here. Oh, hang about. There's a. Don't know what's going on over there. I think that'd be fine. I know will work. I know it will work. I know that the Roboport will, that its range will get from here to here, no problem. So it means that the robots, not that the robots need access to anything in this area, just so that they can, it's just so that they can fly over it and gain the access to the rest of the factory. It's just one other thing that I've added over time. I've also started to plan out the belts that are obviously going to come out of here. So I need, there's 4 blocks here that I've just built. I need 8 of them in total per side. So 8 of them on this side, 8 of them on the other side. So that's what these output belts are. And also, one of the things that wasn't on my list in my whole planning strategy, mainly because I haven't had to deal with it for some time, is coal, fuel. I need some fuel for these steel furnaces. So that's not currently allowed for in my bus network, but you know, there's plenty of space, loads of space for one to squeeze in there somewhere. I'm sure I'll be able to find some room for it. So that's not the end of the world. I've also just done some calculations, and it turns out that 1 blue belt of coal as fuel for these furnaces can fuel 24 of these blocks, which I think is going to work, 24.7, which I think is going to work out perfectly, because I need one lot of 8 for copper, I need 1 lot of 8 for iron, and then another lot of 8. I don't even think I need another lot of 8 for steel. I think it's another 5 for steel. So 8 plus 8 plus 5 is 21. So I'm going to 21 of that 26.7. And then I'm going to need some coal, some stone blocks as well. So I'm going to have one coal fuel input in the bus either side of the train tracks, so it's symmetrical. Yeah, I do like symmetry, and that will feed either side and still have some left over for whatever else I need it for. So really, what I'm trying to get to is some point where I can start looking at the railways, because that is going to be what sets everything out. And because I've got this control panel back down to here, this is where I'm going to put all the timing stuff. It's all a little bit lopsided, so the railway is going to start here somewhere. That's what I need to start building now. Let's have a look at the time lapse while we're here. Where are we? We have just finished moving. Okay, so I mean, I have more or less filled the space up that I've allotted for myself. I almost need to zoom out already. What can I do to spare some time? I need to move this perimeter wall. I need more space. I can do that. Let's do that now. So I figured, well, I haven't had much attention from the biters in very long. Do I really need to move all of my defences onto this new wall? It's entirely possible that I need to move this wall again very, very shortly when I start filling this out. So I've just built the wall, 2 lines of wall, and left it at that. If they attack me, I'll hear them. But I honestly haven't even seen an attack in, I don't know, at least an hour. At least, more than that, probably. So I should be okay for the time being. In terms of where I am, what I need to do is I need to move the time lapse. I've obviously, what I've actually done is made a mistake. I've moved the time lapse from the starter factory over to here, and I put it in the wrong place. And now I need to move it back into the right place. So it's annoying, because what's going to happen in the time lapse is you're going to have 5 seconds of this smooth moving shot. Then you're going to have 2 seconds of me building stuff, and then you're going to have another 3 or 4 seconds of more zooming out. It's going to be really, really juddery. It's not juddery. It's just going to be not smooth, and really like a bigger gap in the middle between those transitions. But you know, when you make a mistake, you make a mistake. You just got to fix it. And I've tried my best to pad it out to get to this point. I've built more furnaces, even though I still might have to move them. But anyway, I've bite the bullet now. I need to move the time lapse, and then I can start building some trains and figuring out how that's going to interplay. Yeah, that's what I need to do. Well, this has been quite some episode. I probably, time-wise, it's not actually progressed all that much. I don't think. I suppose. What was it? What was the previous time? I can't remember what the previous time was. But I suppose there's been a lot to talk about. I've been planning a lot of explaining to do. I hope it's at least been a little bit useful. I suppose this one might be a little bit one of those episodes where it's either you really found it really nice, really good, you enjoyed it, learned something, or it was just boring as hell. It's going to be one of those ones. Yeah. Anyway, well, it turns out I had to demolish that final lot of steel furnaces because I wanted this is the location of the path that I wanted, and it was in the way. It's worked out okay with the position of these. I'm not happy that there's a 2 gap here. There's a big part of me that wants to demolish all because there's 4 blocks. There's a big part of me that wants to demolish the top 2 and move it up 1 square. But I'm not going to do that. That's silly. What I'm going to do instead is copy it. I'm going to copy this thing that annoys me and put it on the other side, and so that it stays symmetrical. Because the symmetry. What is more important to me? Symmetry, definitely. So I mean, it's been a good episode. I've got the train sorted. I've got the positions of the train sorted. I mean, it is on an oil patch. Don't worry. I'm gonna demolish all of this, and for the purposes of the factory, I'm just going to run the bottom half. Use this oil to get the oil process going, and then once I get enough oil, I'm going to start looking for outposts. I can remove this oil, build the train track in, and bring my factory up to full efficiency. So I can use half of it up to that point. It's not the end of the world. But for the purposes of positioning everything, this just so happened to be where I wanted to position it. It's not important in the long run. All right, well, that's enough. It's long enough already. I'll stop rambling because it's long enough already. Till next time.